Welcome to Vet Talk with your host, Heath Ryan Doy, and my guest.
Tintu Parameswar.
Today will be a two-part. So we're going to do background. We're going to do your charity or your
nonprofit.
Your charity nonprofit, and then we'll go a little bit into what's going on as far as what we talked about on the messenger. I know that you looked up my videos and saw my videos, so I'm thankful for that, and I'm thankful that you still wanted to come on here.
Absolutely.
But yeah, let's get a little bit of your background. Whether you want to start back at civilian, then the Marines, in the transitioning. I don't, as you can tell and know, I really don't put a backstop or beginning. It's all up to you.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, I'm from India originally. I grew up in America for a while. Then I came back when I was 18. Originally from New York City, so 9/11 was a big player in the decision to become a United States Marine for me. I joined the Marine Corps in 2004. After spending some time in corporate America, just didn't feel like I was whole, so I felt I needed to, serve my country. I joined the United States Marine Corps. I've kind of been around the block, I guess, because that was the heat of the war, and people of my complexion or my language skills were highly valuable at the time. So I was afforded the opportunity to move around quite a bit. So apart from serving in uniform, I was able to serve outside of uniform. I worked with a lot of our intelligence communities. I worked with the State Department quite a bit. So I got to see uniformed and ununiformed side of what it takes to, I guess, conduct a war and successfully accomplish what we're there to do. But unfortunately, throughout my deployments, I did encounter some injuries, which at around 2014 is when they decided, hey, your injuries are severe enough that you can't continue any more naval service. So at that point, the Naval Medical Board deemed me retirable. They've retired me due to my medical disabilities. TBI was the biggest one for them. It began to impact my memory and I guess my cognitive skills for some extent that posed me as a risk to continue serving in uniform. Since retirement, I retired out of 29 Palms in California. During my transition time, having children, dealing with PTSD, going through the counseling process, it was difficult for me to deal with the city environment. So our family decided, hey, let's find somewhere calmer, quieter, where you can focus on yourself, recover. The kids aren't stressed out as much. So essentially, we moved out to North Carolina, which we are right now. We lived in Charlotte for a year until we found the perfect spot for us, which is where we are here in Cabarrus County now. Beautiful community. We live in a gated equestrian community with about 12 acres of land. And the neighbors have been wonderful. Everybody's been great with us. So the transition was well. The medical care out here, as far as VAs go, I know there's a lot of horror stories in our VAs. But Charlotte, Salisbury VA is actually one of the best VA systems I've ever been part of. The doctors have worked extremely hard to work with me and my family, and helping my wife understand the caregiver program and helping her help me recover and be whole again. But that's essentially where my transition occurred, and we are here today, here in beautiful North Carolina, with some unfortunate situations as we talked about. But I'm one of those advocates that say, the VA can only do so much. It's not that they don't want to. Government agency that's limited by red tape. Kind of where we would step in as civilian organizations or former veterans that would form groups that can kind of carry on the work that the VA can't do, which on the private side we're able to do.
Yep. That's pretty interesting. I gotta say that's pretty interesting. 2004, so Fallujah, Ramadi, all that. I joined in 2006. I was, in Bahrain for the Flashpoint. We all got, standby platoons in case we needed to go out to Basra and over there. So, and it did affect me. I drank a lot in Bahrain. And then when I got transferred out to Virginia, and I basically said I quit. Everyone says washed out, but once you're past basic and into the fleet or into the field, you don't wash out.
Right.
There is no washing out. So, after 2 years and 7 months, I just, went through out processing in Norfolk. And my transition really wasn't a transition. It was like most people at the time in 2009, which was, let's get back into the world.
Yep.
Try to cope. I was married at one time. Can't say it was the best. Have one good-looking boy. He just had a birthday last month, so I don't keep in contact as much as I should, and I beat myself up a lot about that. He knows that I love him, and then I have a stepdaughter, but I call her my own, and she's beautiful. Other than that, I'm just, doing what I can to keep me sane until I can get back into the workforce again.
Absolutely.
And so I started doing this. Kind of freaked out more than normal and decided, screw it, I'm going to do the podcast. So I did the first one by myself, second one all the way up to 5. I had a partner. He resigned, so I'm back on my own and still trying to figure this out, the formula, everything like that. That was loud. And I do talk to other veterans. I pick and choose from I Got Your 6, which I saw your post at, and then 22 is 22 too many.
Yep, absolutely.
I really do believe that peer counseling, which is what those groups are, is very beneficial for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know a lot of people can't trust the techs and psychs at the VA, so why not keep the peer group going like we have? So sorry. Other than that, I'm getting this. You see why it's a long tangent and episode and all that?
Right. Hey, you do fairly decent editing, so that's good. You cut and splice pretty well.
Believe it or not, none of that is edited.
No way.
Yeah, none of those videos are edited.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
That's how good the flow is. And I try, like I said, I try to make it as genuine as I can.
Gotcha.
So, all right. I keep forgetting the name. I know it's Operation DV.
Operation Decisive Victory.
Decisive Victory?
Yes.
All right. So Operation Decisive Victory. Give us the background. How did you think of that?
Okay, so as we had discussed earlier, some of the issues that we went through and are still going through over the past year and a half, from a personal standpoint, um, naturally as veterans, we would start approaching our support elements, the veteran agencies, the VA, local authorities that are involved in veterans affairs. And what we realized was that what we were going through was either too politically incorrect for them to be involved in, or
Hmm.
sensitive for them to be involved in, or it wasn't high profile enough to be a rewarding story to put their name with. So the bigger corporate organizations, the big guys, um, when we approached them, that's the response we got. Hey, that's really not something we would be interested in dealing with. It doesn't align with what we're trying to do. And of course, all the local agencies and our smaller veteran agencies, when we approach them, a lot of them are like, "Oh, hey, we can't be associated to something like that because you're not a member," or we can't be associated to that because you're not, that's not what our cause is. And what we realized, we sat back and it was a struggle. Naturally as veterans, when we are so used to having the support of our teammates, of our fire teams, of our squads, our squadrons. We've always relied on that oneness, that wholeness, a unity that's there. And becoming a veteran, that in that transition, that's one of the things that we miss out on. We lose that here in the veteran community, and we kind of pass that on to these other organizations we tie into to
Hmm.
kind of have our backs at that point. Because again, like you were mentioning a little while ago, we feel more comfortable talking to our own people than doctors and techs at a hospital. Not so much a lack of trust, but lack of understanding. That person's really not going to understand me like my brother does, who was right there with me on those footprints or at that deployment, or you get the context.
Hmm.
One of the reasons why we're attracted to these organizations and groups when we get out. Um, and it was hurtful. It was definitely hurtful. It was shocking that our own would turn their backs on us. Um, I understand if you can't help me, but they could have turned around and said, "Hey, you know what, man? We'll figure something out.
Hmm.
Let's make some calls. We got you. We'll stand beside you until we figure this out. We were not going to leave you hanging." When all these organizations walked away from us, it devastated my family because we've been members in a lot of these organizations for a very, very long time, paying members. Um, so I withdrew my membership from majority of these organizations.
Hmm.
I was like, you know what? It makes no sense for me to pay into something that truly is not sticking to their purpose. We sat back and we kind of thought to ourselves, we can sit here and cry and complain about what didn't work out for us, or who didn't help us, or we can do something and build a solution to the problem that we're in right now, so that no one else has to go through it. That's where the idea for Operation Decisive Victory came from. And the other element that played into the building of the organization was the name of it. Decisive victory for us in the military term is, a small, quick victory that kind of levels up to the next part of the war so we can continue on and fight and win the war.
Hmm.
So they're typically levels. Decisive victories are victories in levels that we get so we can finally win the war. And we wanted to define the organization as, listen, we're not here to fight big fights in one day. We want to get those small victories for our veterans. If it's getting a veteran's rent paid without having to, put his family out on the street, that's a small victory. That's a decisive victory we have. That veteran will be alive for one more day. His family will be together for one more day. And that's the way we looked at it. If it's, a veteran who's has no clue how to get his benefits filed, if I can take that veteran and say, listen, brother, let me walk you through the process. All
Hmm.
right. Just like we do when we check into a new unit, we have either an NCO or a senior member of our platoon or group or squad that would take us around to check us in and get things done for us. We want to serve that purpose. And the other part was families. Families become overwhelmed dealing with veterans because, again, we're a different breed of human being. The way we cope and understand things is very different. Even though our families are veteran families, they didn't have to learn to cope the way we did, or learn to address things, or close things out the way we did.
Hmm.
Coming into the veteran world, into the civilian world as a veteran, it becomes difficult for the families to justify why we are the way we are, because they're civilians and their civilian counterparts are asking them, hey, what's wrong with your family?
Mm-hmm.
Why is your husband this way? Why is your wife this way? Why is your son this way? And that's a difficult question to answer. And what we learned is that there are no support elements for our families to just pick up the phone and say, listen, I need help with this. I don't know what to do here. If you weren't part of a certain organization, or if you weren't part of a certain group, they weren't really willing to help us. They weren't willing to assist us.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing we also came across, there are great organizations out there that do things like that. However, they're restricted to their little local spaces. So if it's an organization in Florida, I reached out to and said, hey guys, can you help me with the situation that I'm in? They're like, we wish we could. Unfortunately, we only work within Florida. So what we did was we took all those rejections, what we were rejected to, what we were rejected for, and we turned that into Operation Decisive Victory. And we address our mission statement in 3 key words: advocate, educate, and empower. We want to be able to advocate for our veterans, their rights, their quality of life, their families who struggled with them. Nobody, and I mean nobody, has the right to strip that away from our families. Because they, just as much as we sacrificed, they were there with us. They sacrificed just as much. And like you said, your 2 children, I have 2 little children as well. And I have to watch them grow up sacrificing a lot of their childhood for me, because they can't run around the house yelling and screaming. They can't run around throwing toys in the house because it will startle me, or it will impact me one way or the other. So those are children. Those are Americans that will continue to sacrifice for this country. A sacrifice that most Americans will never see. Our children will grow up with giving those sacrifices, and their classmates will never know that they've sacrificed for this country just as their parents did or their families have done. So we want to advocate. We want to be there to speak on behalf of our veterans. Though everybody speaks about veterans, very few, truly follow through with what their advocacy is. And what we did to ensure that we don't miss out on what our mission is, we made sure that the people that are sitting in our executive branches, that are our CEOs, our CFOs, our brand managers, and our ambassadors, they are all one way or the other tied to the military. You're either a military sibling, you're a military mother, you're a military spouse. We made sure we built the leaders in the organization to have military leadership. Mm-hmm. The other part is to educate. One of the things we learned going through the court systems is the civilian world is not educated in dealing with veteran issues, because they're so comfortable pushing veteran issues towards the VA. And what we realize is, if this legal system, if our society is not prepared to deal with these veteran issues, we're going to be in trouble as a nation. As I discussed with most people, we're going on 20 years of Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and that Middle Eastern conflict. So we're talking about the majority of guys that are pushing out at their 20-year mark, coming back into society. All they've known for the past 20 years is war. This is all they've known. They will be a changed human being. They're not going to be somebody that, unfortunately, our systems are limited. The DOD has transition programs. I know in the Marine Corps, we have a 1-week transition program. In that transition program, we have resumes and all this other stuff, and how to file your VA claims, and recruiters will come in and talk to you about jobs. But nowhere do we spend money to retrain a civilian to be a civilian now. Mm-hmm. We spend so much money training a civilian to be an armed fighter, but then we take 1 week to just tell them, hey, write a resume, good luck, and enjoy your life in the civilian world. The investment's not there. And again, understandable, not blaming the government, not blaming the system. It's limited. The resources are limited. What they're capable of is limited. That's where we have the ability as private organizations to support and supplement what they cannot do. So again, education is one of the things that the VA can't do. VA can't go around these communities and educate the police departments on how to deal with the veteran in distress. They can't go and talk to the EMTs out in the area, telling them, hey, listen, when you approach a veteran and he's acting a certain way, how do you manage that person? How do you relate to him when you're getting his medical attention? Because a lot of times, I know for me, when I see blood, my thought starts racing. It's not that I'm afraid of it, but I can't help the memories from rushing in. So if I were in an accident, I think I would act hysterical because of the amount of blood or whatever I might see, or the pain that I'm feeling. So the VA or the government, the DOD, does not have the resource to go around and train these people. And that's what we want to do. We want to go and educate our communities. We're working with the sheriff's department out here. We're working with the county mental health liaisons out here to try and get that education out to our lawyers, the judges, the cops, the EMTs, the firefighters, and even the average ordinary government officials that interact with civilians or veteran civilians. If I were to go into the county office and ask for a document or whatever, most times we know how the DMV or these government offices are. They're tired, they're disgruntled, they're dealing with so many people all day long, and you react the same way you do to a civilian, to the veteran. His reaction might be different. You give that veteran an attitude, or you're grumpy with him, or you're getting snotty with him, his reaction immediately would be defensive. And it's not his fault. But that's where we have to educate these agencies that interact with us. Hey, as soon as he's identified as a veteran, tone it down, deal with them a little different, interact with them a little different. They are very good with direct questions, direct answers. Rhetorical questions don't entertain service members. We're so used to orders and discipline that, some of the questions that people would ask you that they know they're just asking to annoy you, the reaction the veteran gives is going to be very, very different. Again, that change will come through education, and we have to educate our society and our families, and get out there and really speak on behalf of our veterans. It's not a once a year event we do. We constantly go knocking on doors. Anybody who's willing to listen about veteran handling, veteran care, we will speak to. I don't care if it's just a 2-man sheriff's department, deputy and the sheriff. If you're willing to listen to us, we will educate you on this, because knowledge is power. I mean, we're always told that knowledge is power. And then the third aspect of our mission is to empower. We want to empower the veterans. We want to empower the families of those veterans to take an active role. The system is intimidating. The VA system, the civilian world, it's intimidating once we come out of that structured life of the military. And we want to empower the families to know that there's organizations like ours that, we are a 100% volunteer organization that takes the time. If you need a ride to go to the VA hospital, that's what we're going to do. We're going to arrange a ride to the VA hospital. We've made liaisons at the VA hospital. So when we have, for example, we had a veteran recently who got out in 2007. He was medically released from the Navy. Unfortunately, the veteran service officer in his county has never seen a DD-214 like his before. So the veteran service officer denied him care. They told him that he doesn't qualify for any VA benefits. And this was in 2007. December 25th, Christmas evening, I get a call from this veteran saying he's in trouble and he needs help. Never been to his place before. I know where he lives. He's not too far away. We went out there. He was bloodied head to toe. His house was trashed. He had messed up his entire house. We had to call law enforcement to come out so we can get all that stuff documented, make sure he didn't hurt anybody else. And this law enforcement officer that came out was extremely amazing in dealing with this veteran. I explained to him, this veteran's in emotional distress. He's willing to go to the hospital with me. All I'm asking you is just let me take him to the hospital. Putting silver bracelets on him and a mugshot is not going to solve this guy's problem. And I was able to take him to the hospital, check him in. We were able to check in with his family. And that's when we learned that this veteran has had no care. He was let go from the service for service-connected emotional distress. But because the VSO kept kicking him to the curb, he had no sources. And again, the spouse was not informed or empowered to go and seek these sources they needed. And their family was struggling. Their children were struggling. Their marriage was struggling. And here, this veteran is, everybody calls him crazy. He's insane. He's completely out of whack. We took him into the hospital, checked him in. Finally comes out, he has a borderline personality disorder with a little bit of depression, but not an ounce of medication is required. He needs therapy and treatment. He's unemployed. We took him to the local VA. We have a liaison there that we've been working with for quite some time. So we took him to the local VA and we checked him in because he's unemployed, and we did his means study, and we were able to get him medical care the same day. So now he's going to the VA, getting his care that he needs, that he's been trying to get since 2007. We walked him into our local VSO, who's one of our partners in the area, and he filed all the paperwork for this veteran to receive his benefits. in a matter of maybe 30 to 45 minutes. You know, it took us 7 days to get done for this young man what he should have been taken care of a long time ago if we had those resources available, or if that family was empowered knowing, listen, if one door closes, there's another agency that's going to be out there. But it's far too often that our veterans fall through the cracks because they're not empowered enough. They're not told, listen, when one guy says, no, you don't qualify for this, or this doesn't happen that way, reach out to another one. You know, reach out to the next guy. Call the nearest vet you know and ask him what he went through, what process he went through. You know, is there somebody he can introduce you to talk to? And in this veteran's case, man, we were able to walk him through step by step and everything, just based on the experience of what we had and based on the contacts we had. And now the veteran's reintegrated with his family. He's going to treatment. He's doing amazing, you know, and his family's happier. His children are happy that they have their dad. That could have easily been a 22. That young man could have easily been a 22. But again, the system failed him. Do I blame the system? No, I don't blame the system. Again, that's where organizations like ours can step in and supplement what their red tapes are. You know, when I went and introduced myself to that VSO to ask why this veteran did not receive the care he needed, the VSO was like, well, no, that's not what I told him. I just told him he won't get any, compensation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I told him, you know, he can go. I was like, wait a minute. That's not what you do. You're supposed to tell this veteran, listen, you don't qualify for this, but let's see what else you qualify for. Let's see if there's anything out there we can help you get to help you and your family.
Mm-hmm.
But quite too often, these organizations that are, you know, restricted by manpower, limited in resources, they'll kick these veterans to the curb if they're not an easy case. I walked out and walked into my VSO, filed my papers. It was easy. I had my complete DD-214, my medical records, everything was in line. I was medically retired, so it was easy for them to file my papers. And that's where we want to make sure we empower. We empower the families and knowing that, listen, there's so many more resources out there. If one doesn't answer, call another. And that's where Operation Decisive Victory's mission statement of advocate, educate, and empower came from.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. That is exactly what we need. Exactly what we need. And kind of choked me up a little bit there.
But it's the truth, brother. You know, that way too many of our guys go through this.
Yeah.
And it's easy to overlook us because there's so many of us. You know, it's easy for us to fall through the cracks because there's so many of us. And what I wished all these independent organizations would be willing to work together in partnership. I'm not saying, you know, hey, take credit for what you do and, you know, be proud of what you do. But if I can't handle a certain issue and I know you guys can, we should be able to rely on one another to go ahead and transfer that veteran over for them to carry on and start the process with.
Yeah, that's how it should be, but ego, membership, money.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And, you know, it's just, I don't know. That's why I like what I'm doing. You know, that's why I like this little mini podcast, is because, you know, I can get what I feel needs to be out there for people. You know, and if they take it, they take it. If they don't, they don't. If they want more clarification, you know, as you have seen in the descriptions, I put the email for the podcast. I put, you know, my Twitter account, my Facebook account. Recently, we added the page that you can go on to and like, you know, and you know, the only complaints I ever get is, you know, better video, better audio, better this, better that. And, you know, I always put in my Patreon, I always, you know, show merchandise when I put it out there too, which is that one fucking shirt. And it comes in like 5 different colors. I kind of color coordinated it for each service, you know.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it looks baby blue. It looks, you know, looks Air Force blue, but I mean, if you actually click on that link, get onto there, you'll see there's red, there's orange, there's, you know, black, there's yellow, there's you know, I was just trying to find different colors that we could associate with it. And you know, it's not to broadcast the podcast. It really isn't. You know, it's, you know, if you like it, buy it. If you don't like it, I don't care. You know, I'm only getting 85 cents out of the whole theme, you know, for it. Um, you know, but you know, I get a lot of had a lot of views. Had a lot of views. And you know, it's pretty cool when people get onto there, look at the videos, and they're like, "Oh, this is good." You know, it's like, "Well, did you watch all the videos?" No. Well, watch all the videos, then let me know what you think. And then they're like, "Well, you know, this could help me. This could help me. This won't help me. This won't help me." And you know, like I told you, like I tell everybody else who I, you know, have go through the whole videos is, you know, it's not tailored for just any person. It's tailored for everybody, you
Absolutely.
know. And I know that this two-parter will help people. You know, the only thing is going to be, you know, the game plan. You know,
Absolutely.
sadly, I can honestly say that I did not rush into this one like I do every other one. Um, I, you know, did some research yesterday, talking to you yesterday. I know you're busy. That's why I don't, you know, put a rush on everything. You know, I put my 3 messages in, wait for your, you know, reply. Then I'll put my reply in, and you know, I just because everyone's busy. I get that.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
not everybody has time like me, but my time management skills have never been the best in service, at service, before service. So, you know, I've always done jobs, work, put myself into it. You know, when I come home, you know, when I got my days off, fine. I give, you know, my attention to everybody else. You know, so it's hard, you know, even to then. But I do like the nonprofit, what you guys do. Um, you know, I will actually put the email in the link in the description for anybody.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
and you know, I would like to see more of this. You know, I know there's a few. There's, you know, Silkies and you know, I try to put well, as you can tell, I try to put more emphasis on your organization, uh, Irreverent Warriors, Ranger Up, Black Rifle Coffee Company, because it helps soothe the divide that we're seeing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, you know, and I mean, another reason why I started doing this is because of Nick Palmachano. And I don't know if you've watched a lot of his videos with Ranger Up, but he did one video on veterans, and it was basically that, you know, with all the 22s going on,
Yep.
you know, there's not going to be many of us. I mean, we're
Absolutely.
already seeing a deficiency as is. You know, I went to the
Mhm.
Veterans Day parade to see my sister-in-law because she's in JROTC. And when it came, I see, you know, a lot of marchers. You know, 5, 6, you know, 7, 8 people in convoys down the parade here in Denver. Got to us, I see 3 vehicles, maybe 8 guys behind the banner.
Absolutely.
I'm just like, what the fuck? It, you know, it just, and it did surprise me. It didn't surprise me at all. You know, I think it's funny because I was telling, when I got back with my fiance, um, I told her, she was telling me about, you know, people would come up to me, say, thank you for your service, thank you for your service. And then when I'd get away from them and, you know, she's in earshot of me or she, you know, we're talking, I'm like, I just want to tell those people to go fuck yourselves. You know, it's lip service. No one gives a fuck. I'm like, you know, I almost put us in with the transition of Vietnam. I mean,
And
yeah, we do get the lip service.
you know, that's one of the things that we have been addressing with our county here and the county sheriffs out here. Um, part of the education aspect of preparing our communities, our society, our legal system for that. And
Oh, come on. Hold on 1 minute. There we go. All right, sorry about that. The connection got timed out again. I don't get what's up with this thing. I think it might be my laptop, but uh, please continue if you can.
yeah, absolutely. We're talking about the comparison of Vietnam to what's going on with veterans today. You know, it's one of the things that we've been discussing with the county out here, and why we're pushing educate our community so much. If you really look at it, after the Vietnam era, you know, yes, the veterans weren't treated well. Got it. That's aside from the situation. But when vets came back, you know, there was so much unemployment amongst these guys. There were so many disabilities amongst these guys. And of course, that played into the factor, and of how the community received them played into the factor of crimes. And what we began doing was filling our legal system, our jail system, and our courts with Vietnam veterans. They are the largest incarcerated population amongst military. So if we look at any generation of warfighters that have come back, Vietnam veterans have served the most time behind bars, or as far as quantity is concerned, have been booked and processed into a jail system. And I look at it today from our perspective and I go, okay, what could we do to change that? And the only thing we can do to change that is to educate and prepare the communities to receive these veterans. Understand that veterans function a very different way. They process information a different way. They were trained for a specific purpose, and they spent 18, 20 years, shoot, it could even be 2 years of doing whatever you did in the most harshest places, you know, away from family and away from the freedoms that we enjoy here, willing to pay the price for whatever these guys out here wish to do with their lives while putting ours on the line. And if we are not prepared to accept that veterans are unique, they are different, they need to be addressed and treated a specific way, we're looking at that trend being repeated again, where we are going to fill our jail systems up again with these OIF, OEF veterans, just like we did the Vietnam guys. You know, a lot of people call it, you know, trigger hair response, but the reality is the responses we as veterans show today as we come back from these deployments is what kept us alive out there. And after seeing that harsh side of the world, and after seeing what it takes to stay alive out there, coming back home and saying, oh yeah, everything is fine and dandy is not. And I, you know, often when I speak with my friends or my family, and I explain to them, I was like, you know, I remember walking through a market in Fallujah. I remember walking through a market, nice sunny day, you know, we're doing foot patrol, kids are running around kicking a little soccer ball. It was a normal day in Fallujah, Iraq for them, just like it is today for us. It's a normal day here for us today. But in a matter of split seconds, there was a car bomb that went off in the middle of that market. And that normal day will never be normal again to them. So we have to understand that our veterans have seen things and compare and contrast the world very differently today. You know, we come back, and even though we know, yes, this is my home, I'm safe here, you know, this is the land of the free, and I have police to protect me, and my military will protect me, and I got fences and borders and all this other, we still have to accept the reality that that can change very quickly. because we saw it change somewhere else very quickly. And we saw it over and over again. So when we come back and society expects us to just hang up our uniform and forget everything you did for the past whatever year amount of time you spent in uniform, it just doesn't work that way. And when we come back and we're told, go back into the civilian world and enjoy your life, we are more prone to committing things that are not acceptable in society. If someone was to rile up a combat veteran while he's at a bar, and all he wants to do is just have a drink and enjoy his time, his reaction might not be just to shove that guy. His reaction might be to make sure that threat does not stand back up to eliminate him. But if we hold that civilian to the same standards, if we hold that veteran to the same standards as some rowdy, drunk civilian who just wants to start fights with people every day, and we commit him for the same crime, we are doing him injustice. Because all he did was what America paid him to do. America paid to train him to defend at all costs. And at this moment, someone instigated, riled him up to the point that he had to react, or his training or instincts kicked in. There is no control of that at that point. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes counseling and therapy and plenty of community effort for that veteran to reintegrate back into society and say, you know what? I can accept the fact that there are dangers in the world, but I'm okay right now. Things are good. And I'm skilled. I have the skills to protect my friends, family, or whoever it is nearby in the event something happens. But right now, I can't turn that off in my brain. Right now, I have to constantly be aware that that car bomb could go off in the middle of the mall or the market, because it's happened before. I've seen it happen. So that's one of those concepts, where if we don't prepare our society, if we don't educate our society, and if society and laws don't work together to be able to promote quality of life for our veterans, we are just going to be filling our jail systems with them. We'll be punishing them for something that they're really not guilty of, because we're holding them to the same standards as an average criminal or some reject of society, somebody that's always been in trouble his whole life. And you have this one veteran that comes out and commits an offense and he ends up behind bars. Does that solve anybody's problem? Does that help the veteran? Does that help the community? All you did now was betray that veteran. And I say that from the bottom of my heart, because that's what I felt the court system did when I was going through my legal battles. I felt betrayed. I felt the country, the system, the justice system I believed in, the flag I believed in, called me a criminal when all I was trying to do was provide my family a safe haven to live, trying to provide them the same freedoms that I fought for everybody else. And that betrayal can hurt. That sense of betrayal can really harm a veteran's ability to respect and enjoy himself and his country and really believe in what he did for our country. I mean, a lot of us come back with regret. Don't get me wrong. We see things, we lose friends, and we go, man, what was this all for? This is all for nothing. But the truth is, at the end of the day, veterans should always be proud of the fact that they did something for their country and their countrymen that majority of the rest of them were ready to do. But once he loses that pride in what he's done for this country, now he becomes at risk because he has no more self-worth, no self-value, no pride. And those are ways we harm our veterans. But, and going back to the point, that is exactly what we did as a country to the Vietnam veterans. Whether you agree with the war or not, it wasn't that veteran's choice. He was asked and he did a job. And in this case, after 9/11, everybody's a volunteer. Everyone had to sign a dotted line. Nobody was drafted. No one was forced by courts to go. So it's a very unique population that comes back, and we expect our country to appreciate not our service, but the sacrifice that everyone has done, all our service members have done to keep our country safe. And the Vietnam era veterans went through that heartbreak and they pushed forward. They kicked butt with all these legislative changes and fighting with the VA. So our generation of veterans don't have to go through that. But now we're back in the same spot again. We're back in the same spot where we are going to take a population, a group that we sent away, and put them back at risk.
So true, so true. Now, for devil's advocate, people would, people would say, so why would it change for Vietnam vets than Korean, World War II, World War I, and previous conflicts before that? What would be your reply?
The idea or the concept of that change was not patriotic, was not in concern of patriotism of our country. Those changes were strictly political. And when I say political is whether you agreed to a conflict or not, and coming from and having seen the transition in the Middle East and from the eastern side of the world, I can tell you a lot of war is political, but then there's a lot of war that are necessities that are done because nobody else will. The political side, absolutely, we have to be upset with, hey, we shouldn't politicize war. Got it. But that's age-old history. It is not going to change. But that the way we treated our veterans when they came back was strictly political. So those treatments were political. Whether it was the Korean War, the World War, whether it was Vietnam, the way we received our veterans when they came back was strictly political. And what I mean by that is, if we look at the World War generation and we call them the greatest generation ever, that was a generation of Americans, not warriors, but of Americans that shut down America to fight a war. Mothers went to factories to build bullets. Car factories shut down to make bombs. Children went to daycare and stayed there for hours so parents could go and work. Men packed up their bags and went on year-long deployments. When they came back, it was the country that won the war. Everyone participated. We won. As a nation, we won. Now we consider Vietnam. There's that political wrapper around it. Why were we there? What was the cause? What happened here? And should it have been that long? And should we have been there? Again, we eliminate the politics out of it, the political questions out of it, and we go, at the end of the day, our boys went over there. Our men, our women served over there. When they come back, they should deserve nothing less than to be treated like Americans again, who answered the call of a country, who answered the demands and orders of a president, of our elected officials in Congress, and did their job. Because any day, I would take someone who will stand up and do their job than the guy that's going to question when I need him to protect me. And that's the truth about America. We want our freedoms, but there have been times in our history where we've been too consumed by the politics, which we should not be. As civilians, when our veterans come back, we should not be consumed by the politics because that service member did not have a choice in the performance of his acts or the missions that he was handed down. He swore to protect our Constitution. He swore to serve our president and our government and our officials. So when again, to your question, when I look at these wars and I try to say, there's really nothing different. The difference is the politics. If we remove politics from everything, we would start to appreciate our veterans. And again, the World War era, that was a war that was won by the country, by the society, by everyone, because we all participated. Vietnam, when that war was going on, America was still doing their thing. 9/11 happened. Brother, I remember going down there 3-4 months after the towers came down. People just walk right past it like nothing happened. We move on. We moved on. That gung-ho spirit of, our country's been attacked, we need to respond. That only mattered to us. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter to the average American who was too busy on Facebook, tweeting and posting. And that's that difference. we are a self-consumed society today that did not participate in this war together. If you look at the OIF era and say, if we had schools and organizations that made it mandatory to write letters to our veterans, or made it mandatory that we collect supplies and comfort items for our veterans, all public schools have to do it, or all schools receiving government funds have to do it. Now there would be more pride because they participated in the success of that conflict. They supported their troops. So that's truly, again, my observation, my opinion, that's truly the difference.
Yeah, no, I share that too. I really do. I share that too. And I mean, sadly, the thing that we do fight for, the country, family, constitution, you know, even the Constitution says that, wars, actions, all that have to be political. They have to go through the Congress. Of course, they're going to get, a leg up whether they hate the war, love the war.
Absolutely.
I mean, it doesn't mean anything. Sorry. How do you feel about the latest elections for the Senate and or for Congress, basically? Both House and Senate. I think what I seem to notice is there seems to be a lot more veterans in this class than there
Yes.
have been.
Which I think is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very important. Unfortunately, a disadvantage that we are at as this generation of Americans, anybody within their 40s, under 50 years old, is that we, as this generation, this population, have not taken an active role in our political system. We have not focused on putting younger senators and younger congressmen in. We just don't care for it. So to see these young blood come in, the fresher guys, the younger ones, the veterans come in, they're bringing very different perspective. And again, for change, we have to have multiple perspectives. I don't sit there and talk down on either side of the aisle. There are disadvantages to both. But again, that's the machine. That's what politics is.
Mm-hmm.
It's an entertainment. It's a theatrical, venue. And when we introduce new blood with new cause, I think it'll give us purpose again. That's one of my qualms or my upsets with Congress today, or with our elected officials today, is it's far too often seen that they've lost their purpose. You forget you were elected to serve the people, and it seems like a lot more self-service is happening, and good old boy network is happening. And to truly make America what it was, or what it was intended to be, we have to take care of the people.
Mm-hmm.
And we as veterans, we are a very minority population, but a very vulnerable population who has rarely had voice in Congress. And by seeing these younger veterans come in there, experienced, seasoned guys come in, it gives us voice. It gives us hope that we can influence change. We can influence growth and prosperity within our country.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, I mean, I was very happy. I think maybe not too. I didn't really look. I was mostly in my so in my district, District 6 here in Colorado. I had to choose between my representative, who I had chosen for years, Mike Kaufman, a retired colonel in the Marine Corps, or this new guy, Jason Crow, former captain in the Rangers. everything aside, as far as Democrat and Republican, you know, I had looked for appearances, you know, and I gotta admit, I watch a lot of C-SPAN. I mean, I am glued to that because they do show the Senate and the
Yep,
House of
absolutely.
Representatives. And you know, you had this new guy come in, and you know, they rated all of this, you know, boosted him up, um, and then you know, demonized the candidates that I vote for. And I was like, you know what? He's probably not going to get reelected, but I'm still going to cast my vote for him because he spoke about veteran issues in Colorado. Um, you know, he knows that certain issues could be problematic for veterans. One thing was gun control here in Colorado. I don't know if you know about it, but the gun control law that was passed, I believe, a year or 2 years ago says that, you know, for a handgun, you can have a 10-round magazine. That was supposed to stop mass shootings here in Colorado. And when they had proposed that, I said, that's not going to change anything. And I went about it like an idiot, but I went about it the only way I know how to. And that would be if me and you had, you know, 5 10-round magazines, a whole box of ammo. That 10 round and that reload is not really going to stop something from happening.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Especially when you're trained on a gun range, 1, 2, you know, 3-second reloads, you know, and while you're doing that, you know, you're behind cover. What are you doing? Speed loading with your hands, that magazine. Yeah, and trying not to get too political over here, but you know, and that I'm going to segue that into mental health. You know, universal background checks for, you know, weapons. They're trying to make it into a whole big database. Problem I see with that is me, you, other people who came out post 9/11, we're going to have to surrender everything.
So I'm glad you just mentioned that. So we had discussed, you know, over chat. I was in court recently for an incident that involved a firearm from a year ago. They were pushing for a felony charge against me, and you know, fortunately for me, the judge and the DA were, I guess, understanding of what actually happened that day and the situation that we were in. That I was given a misdemeanor charge, but one of the conditions were that I have to surrender my firearms for the duration of the time that I'm on probation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the accuser wanted my firearms taken away permanently, but the court said, "Hey, during your time during probation, you can't have it. I understand that. I appreciate it. Got it." They ordered mandatory or court-ordered mental health evaluation. They ordered court-ordered anger management as well. One of the issues with that is I've already been in treatment with the VA for I think 5 years now, between therapy, counseling, medication, everything for my PTSD. I've never been flagged as, you know, suicidal, homicidal. Never had anger issues or been flagged as aggressive. Now we are forcing this veteran to go sit in front of a civilian psychiatrist, social worker, whatever it may be, to do a mental health evaluation. And this civilian who doesn't deal with veterans, you know, probably deals with average, ordinary criminals, has no clue of the impact some of the stuff I say have had on me, or other veterans, to the point of why it became part of the way we function. And if this psychiatrist or this social worker, whoever the government had appointed to evaluate me for my mental health, felt that, hey man, this guy's got some anger issues. Yeah, he definitely doesn't sound like he enjoys life, or he definitely doesn't sound like he likes people. He seems like he's somebody that's a hair trigger, and they put that in that system. And now I've been diagnosed with something that I've never been diagnosed for before. And now that's what they'll hold me to. They won't hold me to my VA records that say, hey, this guy's been coming to counseling, he's taking his meds on time, his family's doing great, he's progressing in therapy, and we are hopeful that things are going to be really good for this guy. They're not going to care for that. What they care about is what they found and what they evaluate, or what they perceive to be our mental state or mental conditions at that time, without having the background or the professional experience. I'm not saying, civilian doctors at the VA are the best, but what I am saying is they are exposed to more vets with these kinds of stories or these symptoms, that there's at least a data sheet that they can refer to and go, okay, this guy says this and that, so okay, that's what he falls under. Got it. Dude's not homicidal. He's just extremely pissed off at this guy, and he's just saying that because he's venting. Whereas a civilian doctor would not consider that, because it's not normal conversation they hear constantly, or normal emotions expressed to them constantly. The same thing with court-ordered anger management. Somebody who's in counseling for PTSD and TBI or whatever it may be, anger management doesn't help us. We're not angry people. There's anger in us, but that's not something that anger management can fix. The anger is a side effect of post-traumatic stress. It's not an issue of its own. So if the court were to send me off to this anger management evaluation, naturally, most people think I'm angry and mean all the time. It's just my facial expression. Part of my TBI is that, I can't express facial emotions all the time. It's just sporadic. So most times I look mean or angry or disgruntled, which I think it's like standard issue for veterans anyway. We're all disgruntled. But this anger management counselor can easily misinterpret my body language or my speech and my expression of things, flag me as someone with critical anger management problems. And now I'm stripped of my rights of owning firearms. Mm-hmm. All this time, you have to remember, I've never been flagged by the VA as being dangerous to anyone. Every time law enforcement has come to my house, I've always had my firearm on my side. I always open carry. One of the beautiful things about North Carolina, open carry anywhere I go. And I've never been arrested, cited, or accused as being a threat to another person. But based on this one doctor's evaluation, my rights to bear arm can easily disappear. Mm-hmm. With no questions, with no ability to appeal. And I think that's where, the mental health aspect of it and the legal aspect of things can be very skewed and can cause a lot of harm to our veteran population. Again, veterans with PTSD, everybody goes, oh, he's got PTSD. PTSD is a lump sum term. PTSD consists of multiple symptoms. Insomnia is another symptom of PTSD that I have. That doesn't mean I'm violent or dangerous. That means I can't sleep. Yeah, but to an average person who goes, oh man, that veteran's got PTSD, immediately the first thing that comes to their mind is we're dangerous, violent, and uncontrollable. And that has to change. That narrative has to change. And it's not going to change until the mental health, the civilian mental health side starts accepting that you can't just declare someone, violent or dangerous just because they have PTSD or that person is a veteran. And that is happening a lot within the United States right now. In fact, I was speaking with our chief development officer last week, who's out of Connecticut. And he was telling me one of his friends actually volunteered to go on a horse riding retreat with a group that conducts horse riding retreats for PTSD therapy. This was a volunteer thing that he did with the state. He lives in New York State. The gentleman lives in New York State. He volunteered with the state program where they take veterans with PTSD to go horse riding. The veteran registered, completed the horse riding. A couple of months later, he went to go purchase a firearm, request a permit to purchase a firearm. They denied him based on the fact that he went to treatment. And that's how they annotated in the system, that he attended treatment for psychological conditions. Not that he rode a pretty little horse for a couple of hours and they were galloping through, forests with little streams and enjoying life, but that he attended a mental health treatment. Therefore, he's flagged as danger. That veteran should not be someone that gets flagged like that. But again, it goes back to what you were saying, where the mental health system and the ability to run these evaluations, they have to have a better process in place. I don't mind universal background checks. Hey, you want to run me? Got it. I think that would be a great thing to have if we were to say, hey, this will make our community safer by making sure the people that are buying firearms are constantly kept in a database that, we can verify, okay, this guy is okay to possess firearms. Got it. But it's not okay to flag every veteran with a certain symptom or a certain, psychological disorder to you have anxiety. Doesn't mean you're going to walk into a theater and go shoot that theater up because you're anxious one day. That's just not how we function. That's not how we cope. But Hollywood, politics, and of course, mainstream media have taken that term of PTSD and blown it out of proportion to make the general population believe that PTSD is, I would equate it, what's happening right now is probably the same mentality people had in the early 80s, early 90s, when AIDS was a big deal that media was talking about. It was everywhere. I couldn't touch him because he had AIDS. I couldn't look at him because he had AIDS. So in the same context, we got to keep these veterans away from everything and everyone because they got PTSD. It's not a contagious disease. It's not something that automatically makes us violent. But that narrative has to change. And mental health professionals are the only ones that can truly change that narrative because it has to start in their industry. It has to start within their circle. We, again, to big pharma, we are an easy population to, cram pills down our mouths. Everything is going to be fixed with this pill. No, trust me. And I've said this in open court. There's no medication ever made that's going to make me forget the things I've seen or the things I've felt. I will eventually have to learn to cope with it, but no medication is going to make me forget it. No medication will make me not feel it. And that makes us prey. It makes us victim to the vicious cycle of this mental health evaluation. And, oh yeah, he's got mental issues. That psychological issues are so broad. Someone who's schizophrenic is not necessarily violent. They have a personality issue. And again, not every schizophrenic is violent, but there might be violent ones. That's where the system has to be refined to be able to sort and grade and score each condition and say, okay, this guy has severe PTSD, but he's not a violent human being. So I cannot strip him of his rights to bear arms.
Yeah, to piggyback what you said is people don't get or understand it's exaggeration of anxiety. And I know, I tell a lot of veterans that, and they're like, wait, what? I'm not exaggerating anything. I'm like, no, you're not getting it. Exaggeration is not what we put it up to today. Exaggeration just means that, a normal person is, here. When we are in the service, we're here. And then when we get out of the service and, nightmares, night terrors, waking up, in the morning and your family's not in the bed because you rolled around, you made, you walked around and they're in the living room. Well, guess what? Now you're exaggerated. Anxiety has, exaggerated itself. So, we're not making it, up or anything like that.
Right. I'll tell you what, man, I spent a very long time trying to figure out when it all started, when did this happen? And it's funny because as I trace back my timeline, I go, man, I walked into an organization, into a unit that had already done multiple deployments since 9/11. So when I joined in 2004, I already walked into an organization that had salty senior guys that have seen a lot of combat already. So it was normal for our guys to have nightmares. It was normal for us to, be isolated. But the thing was, the norm was because everybody was experiencing it the same. So it became the norm for us. And I remember when we would come back from deployments, we would be told, when you get your screening, if you guys say anything wrong, that you have nightmares or, you have flashbacks or this and that, you will be canked off of deployments. And to us, combat element guys, losing our opportunity to deploy was an embarrassment. You might as well just disappear at that point. Don't even ever tell anybody you were part of this organization. So a lot of factors played into not recognizing the symptoms. Again, we can't say exactly when this started or when it began, but we begin to recognize PTSD. We begin to recognize our anxiety symptoms or a lot of these mental health issue conditions once we leave that type of an environment where now we're the only ones that are acting this way and the rest of the crowd is not. Whereas in our units that we deployed together with, or we were in combat with, we were all experiencing the same thing. So it was normal to us. But I'll tell you what, trying to figure this out, I could never make sense of it. I went for my permanent retirement hearing, and when I went there, the medical director who saw me was actually one of the surgeons that had evacuated me when I was in Iraq. And he said the one statement that was like the clouds opened, the sun came out, and knowledge just flew into my heart and my head. And what he said was, listen, PTSD is a normal reaction to abnormal events in our lives. It's not an abnormal reaction to normal events. Most people can't comprehend that. But of all the years of counseling I've been to, man, that man saying that made more sense to me than any doctor trying to sit there with the puzzle of the brain and teach me how things work. And the truth is, we are normal. The reactions we have are normal. These exaggerated responses we have are normal to the abnormal events we experienced. And it's one of those concepts that people just can't understand. Everything we go through, all the symptoms we have, a normal civilian has as well. They startle, they jump, they have anxiety. But like you said, ours are exaggerated because we need that exaggeration to stay alive. If I'm not startled beyond this point, I'm not going to react quick enough. Or if I don't feel a certain amount of anxiety, my focus is just not going to be there, or my alertness won't be there. My hypervigilance has to be extreme. It can't be just being aware of where I'm at, but I need to know what each blade of grass is doing, what each light switch is doing, what each person walking past. So in all honesty, what you explained is absolutely true. It is an exaggeration of regular anxiety, exaggeration of regular depression, exaggeration of regular startle response. But it's a hard concept for the population to understand that the way we are, our reactions are normal reactions to abnormal events in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's funny because, I was inmate. I was law enforcement and security in the Navy. And, I'm a non-combat guy. I'll admit it. And I first started developing symptoms, mostly sleep. First it was insomnia. I couldn't sleep. And then it was, I started to, I wouldn't say hypervigilance, but it was more than most people do. I would look around.
Yep. Yep.
And I can remember the first time I started doing that was when I would go out in town, and this is, Bahrain, it's, allied country.
Yep.
Uh, Me and a group of friends were just unlucky enough to be out getting business done at night during a protest. Now, you tell that to someone over here, and they're like, "Oh, they're like, you're one of those guys." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm one of those guys." Until they talk to somebody who's been, around the Middle Eastern protest, and then they're like, "Well, what?" And I always tell them, I'm like, protests are an understatement
Right. Right. It's not like in America.
in the Middle East. And, that's one thing I do. I do try to preach, and I have been getting on my representative about that, is, everybody that gets out transitions should be checked for PTSD, whether combat or non-combat. MST, anything that is a T. It's
Absolutely. Absolutely.
all a disorder. And I had a good therapist, um, and I got transferred out of therapy. And I still need to go back in and talk to the people for uh, drug and alcohol, that division of the VA. But yeah, I mean, I try to bring awareness for everything because it's not always going to be the same, you know. Um, One thing I know is when I'm around crowds. Had an incident 2-3 days ago where I started looking around, and it was, me and my fiance were went to go get her checkup done and all that, and didn't think about it because usually it's a quick in and out. No, I needed coffee. I get in line. I'm watching everybody walk in and out, walk in and out. Looking around here, starting to grow hot, starting to look at her, and she's looking back at me, and she was, and it clicked a little bit, but doing the look around, started to get hot, started to get a little bit, I would dizzy, short of breath, just out of my element. And pay, talk, blah blah, get out of the line, get near my fiance, start moving her around, start trying to find a good strategically place to put her so that we can get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
And and she looks at me, again, and she's like, oh, she thought about it, and she's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "No, not really, but I'm trying to make the best of it." um you know so I mean, and I keep telling her it doesn't go away, it doesn't, and not, I mean, we try to find a way to live with it. I have headphones, I have earphones, even at home I have earphones because I could go into, because we live in a cold state too, we have heaters on, and all of a sudden that heat comes up, I get hot, I start thinking about a nice sunny day in the desert. And a lot of people do need to realize that it's not the anger side that they should worry about. It's not any of that. It's the fact that we came home from these places, you know, in your case, it was, filled with combat and, you know, getting it done, and mine was protecting the fleet, supplies, fellow Marines, that stopped off before getting dropped off. Um, and even still, it was high speed, low drag. You get off, you're still on. Doesn't matter. You go home and you just, everything changes. When I went home, ah, sometimes I stayed home. I drank in the basement, in the dark, watching war movies. That's not healthy.
No, not at all. But it's a method in which we cope, that
Yeah.
a lot of times we don't know how to handle it and we just need to make it stop or numb.
Yep.
And one of the issues in our veteran communities is drugs, opioids. And it's, everybody says, oh, it's a choice. Yes, for a regular person, it's a choice. But in the veteran's case, you have to remember he's trying to get rid of something, and he's trying to stop feeling. He's trying to numb himself out. So it's a very different context that goes in. But yeah, we all try to cope in our own ways, man. I remember my drinking binges. I couldn't even figure out why I was drinking. I remember telling my doctor, I was like, Doc, I don't even know why I drink. I don't even like to drink, but I just drink because I'm thinking about something and I don't want to think about it and I want it to stop. If I can drink myself to pass out, then I don't have to think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Again, those are just our rationales to try and deal with things. And I try to encourage my veterans, like, listen, guys, get the help you need, man. They are understanding a lot more. The system has understood a lot more about PTSD. They've developed systems or programs that actually work for different types of PTSD and different veterans and different symptoms. It's not like the cookie cutter treatments they had earlier on when they first started going, hey, what the heck is wrong with these guys? Now they've come to understand a lot of documentation is happening. And again, our generation of veterans, we openly speak about our conditions. We openly speak about PTSD. You look at generations before that, Vietnam era, those guys never talked about their struggles. I remember sitting in therapy sessions and I'm like, man, I feel like I don't have any problems compared to these guys that are, have been holding on to this stuff for over 40 years,
mm-hmm.
finally starting to get the help they need. We have, as young veterans today, we have resources there that can help us, but we have to be ready to reach out and ask for that help. And what I try to tell people is, once a veteran asks for help, he's going to do good. Asking for help is the hardest thing that veterans find doing. It's just difficult to ask.
Yeah. And especially for someone like, okay, let's just say us, our generation, us, post 9/11 guys. I always joke, the best advice you'll ever get from sickbay is always, a bottle and a pill. I always joke that, you go into sickbay, oh, your arm's broken. Oh, here's a bottle of Jack, or, whatever your drink is. Here's a pill.
Yeah, and a pill.
Have a good day. Oh, my leg got shot off. Here's a bottle. Here's a pill. Have a good day. And we bring that with us. So I mean, yeah, you're right. When the only alternative that you have, whether a year and a half, 2, 3, 5, retirement, 10, 12, any number, when the only alternative you have is here's a pill, here's a bottle, have fun having therapy, but also in that, it was hard for me. I'm sure it was hard for you, to ask for help.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
First days in transition, because we knew when we were in that we would get blacklisted. That would be the end of it.
Yep.
almost as if they were trying to get people to be, we can't afford you anymore. It's almost like they were encouraging people to be like, I quit.
Yep.
And I finally had enough of it. And it wasn't because I couldn't do it anymore. It was because I did not feel myself. I could be at this great command where they were telling me to go get help, finish out my contract, which I only had 1.5 left. But, finish out my contract, and, we could go from there before I ETS'd. But I, I was very ungrateful. They did so much for me. And I felt like the biggest fuck up because I couldn't sleep, or, I would go drink, pass out, wake up late, get my uniform on, shower sometimes. Other times I'd be so late, get dressed, run, get into, formation into the office, have a bad attitude because, to me, they were snitching because, oh, you smell like a brewery. Well, yeah, no shit. Where do you think I was last night? Like, really? It's like I was in my room. I mean, no one at that command actually got the full picture until I had my last ARI, which basically got me my papers to get out. And it was, when I got out of the hospital, was released and got sent back to my room, I was amazed. There was alcohol everywhere. It gelled up. I was in there for a week. All that alcohol gelled up.
Wow.
And I did not realize until that time, the damage that I, did. The last time before my command went on to deployment and I was going to rehab, I had a lieutenant commander, major on your side, cry in front of me in his office, telling me he apologized to me. And just like if one of your officers was to cry in front of you, you'd look at him like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, and it took me losing custody of my son, and going through a divorce to appreciate now what I should have appreciated before. That officer felt so responsible, felt like he failed me as a sailor, not a junior, ranked junior, but experienced kind of senior of the lower enlisted. He felt so bad that he failed me. Yet at the same turn of the coin, here I am telling him, I don't know why you're crying. This is not your fault. This is not your responsibility. I came into this command with a bad attitude. I'm leaving with a bad attitude. I've, been in long enough to know that I should have changed everything. And I honestly didn't feel that until I got onto the plane to Denver for the last time. And I was like, I remember I was crying my eyes out. People were looking at me because I was bawling. I was crying my eyes out like, what the fuck did I do? And unfortunately, I had an RE4, so I was never able to get back in.
Yep.
And even still, I've came to terms with it, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. this podcast will help me. Talking to other veterans will help me, and that's what I'm doing. So I do know that it is, you're right, it is hard for us post 9/11 guys to come out and, not so much bravado, but, it's still a bad mark, no
Yep.
matter how you look at it.
Absolutely.
Still, even though we're open and
Yep.
secure in our manhood, according to the spouses and civilians, oh, I'm so glad that you're okay with yourself now, that you can go and openly talk to people. It's like, well, I was never insecure with who I am. I was never insecure with who I am. I was just breaking the stigma from 2000, from 2001 all the way up to, I don't know, I think it changed, 2016, 2017?
Yeah, about that time.
Started changing it. You come home, you're off of deployment, go see a therapist. And we won't accept really what that therapist says, but at least you yourself, sailor, soldier, airman, coast guardman, Marine, at least you yourself can live with your decisions. That way you're not going to the armory, checking out that firearm and
Absolutely.
eating it.
Absolutely.
You're not, putting a rope over that light fixture and, so that we can live with ourselves. So should we stop now? Continue.
Yeah, sure.
Continue.
Sure,
All right.
We can pick up next week, or whatever your schedule is like.
Well, again, I'm hoping all week, so
Gotcha.
I based it mostly around you.
Okay, so I'll check my calendar. I'll send you the dates that I have that are wide open. That way, we ain't got to worry about time restrictions or anything.
Okay.
You just tell me what works for you guys. Or yeah.
Yeah. And I really like this. This was a good chat. It was a good vet talk.
Yeah, man. I hope more of the vets listen. They understand that it's important for us to get together and talk like this. And definitely start spreading the word. We have to look out for one another. Again, I will never sit here and say the VA sucks or the government sucks. They're limited. We have to accept that. And we can't change that. We can't change that they only have so much money or so much resources to exploit or, expel. But we can change the fact of how we can supplement what they can't do.
Mm-hmm.
We are powerful. As veterans, we are extremely powerful to our community. We can fill a lot of voids that the government, no matter how great of programs they've had, can never do. And I just hope more of those vets will start, listening to your show and talking about this and spreading the word on, let's get together, let's take care of our own.
Do you have any, I forgot what they call it this time, but any links as far as social media?
Sure. Yeah, I'll email it all to you.
All right.
The website address and everything, I'll email it to you.
Yeah, and usually I let people plug in their stuff before I put it in the description and all that.
Gotcha, yeah.
So if you want to plug, hold on. Wait. You good? Nope. Shit. All right, hold on. Damn it, I can't believe it did that. Let me see here. But yeah, sorry about that. My connection is very unstable, and I'm trying to figure that out. But yeah, if you want to plug social media, your social media, go right ahead. You can do that now if you want to.
All righty. Yeah, if anybody wants to get more information about what we do as Operation Decisive Victory, find us on Facebook at Operation DV or our website at www.operationdv.com. And the same handle goes for Twitter as well. It's Operation DV. Our goal is to make sure that we advocate, educate, and empower so that our community can thrive and be successful and enjoy what we fought for. And again, our motto goes, small victories win big wars. And that's what we want to do. We're not out here to, win big prizes or get the spotlight. We want to help and make sure that everything we do promotes and progresses our veteran community.
Okay. Good. And I will thank you for being on for part 1. I'm very excited that I got a guest, and not only that, but a guest that has a nonprofit, can do private stuff. I extend a lot of invitations out, and so I was really excited to get this.
Absolutely.
For part 1. Part 2, we'll talk about the dark stuff that's been going on. And I call it dark stuff because, to me, and I'm, going to find if that third party, feels the same way I do. But I see, intimidation, harassment, and conspiracy, from what you got. And, what messages I sent you, the messages you sent back, and looking through the timeline, looking all through that with the intimidator, I can see both sides, but then again, I can also see the intimidation, harassment, and what I feel, the failure within the courts, the criminal justice, and all that. I mean, I can see it because he's a real estate developer. RD. He's a Romeo Delta. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, if we looked at that whole case, I mean, I know we'll discuss it the next time around, but everything that occurred was avoidable.
Yeah.
It was preventable. Everything from, and I'll say, my actions were preventable. Their actions were preventable. The courts, the legal systems could have taken steps to prevent all this from happening, but unfortunately the way it's designed, and I think, we'll go into the design of the system and how veterans are vulnerable because of the specific design, the way it is right now, we are an easy target.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's an easier story or an easier concept to understand when a civilian says, "Oh my God, this guy is crazy. He's coming after me. I'm afraid for my life." But then we have to sit there and explain why we react a certain way, what PTSD is, what happened to cause that, what triggers it, and the courts are like, "Oh wait, I got no time for this, man. I got 2 more cases to do after yours, so guilty." But again, we'll discuss it further on in the next episode. Because I think this is something that is happening a lot within our community, within our veteran community, and staying quiet is not going to solve the problem.
Exactly.
Build us a resolution.
Exactly. And we, and again, thank you for being on the show. And that's why I'm honored and so excited and hyped, to have you on because, you are one of the people, who does give a voice, like I tell most people, I may be a voice, but I'm just a microphone. That's really all I am. I'm just a microphone. So thank you because you do action. You put into action what I speak. Yeah, we may not agree on everything, but
sure, absolutely. But that's what makes us America.
Exactly. And that's what makes us a unit, a family.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what we are. We should start looking at each other as, like I called you bro, you called me brother, we're a family. No matter how you slice it, we're a family. Absolutely. And we're a unit. So we should keep that going strong. And so I'm hoping part 2, when we do address the issues, and do address the meat of what you agreed, coming on, and then me what I promised. We can get to that
Okay.
in part two.
Perfect.
And again, thank you. I'm very honored.
Thank you.
I'm happy that this happened. And this is the part that sucks because I never know really what to say, So thank you. Thank you for sacrifice. Thank you for your family sacrifice. Whether they were dependents while you were in, or, in my case, dependents after I was in, But yeah, you do bring hope through organization, and I do appreciate it. And I'm hoping that this helps, you know, with maybe future spots, or, getting the organization Operation Decisive Victory out into the world, into the state, that you get more business out of this, that our families do contact each other.
Absolutely.
So again, thank you. It was an honor. And if you have anything else for final thoughts.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
All right. Well, we'll contact after this, and
All right.
thank you. Thank you very much.
All right.